Let me start with something bold, something most people don't expect to hear. Your performance isn't just about anatomy, it's about control. And the truth is, many men spend years chasing quick fixes, pills, creams, shortcuts, while completely ignoring the one thing that can actually transform their performance in a natural, lasting way. Today, I'm going to show you a simple, science-backed daily exercise that takes just 3 minutes, requires no equipment, and can significantly improve strength, endurance, and overall performance. What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't your body, but your lack of control over it? Think about that for a second. Most people assume performance is something you either have or you don't. They blame genetics, age, or luck. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Power without control is useless asterisk. And if you've never trained your body to respond the way you want, then you're leaving your full potential untapped. Imagine having the ability to switch your performance on when you want, maintain it without struggle, and stay in control under pressure. That's not luck, that's training. Your body is not a mystery, it's a system. And like any system, it can be trained, refined, and optimized. The problem is most people never even try. They look for instant fixes because they don't want to put in consistent effort. But shortcuts don't build control, discipline does. Here's something most people don't realize. Control starts with awareness. If you don't even know how your body responds, how can you expect to improve it? When you begin training, especially something as simple as daily muscle control exercises, you start building a mind-body connection that most people completely lack. You're no longer guessing. You're no longer hopping things work out. You're actively directing your body's response. And here, where it gets powerful. The more control you develop, the more confidence you gain. Not fake confidence, the kind that disappears under pressure, but real, grounded confidence that comes from knowing your body will do what you've trained it to do. That changes everything. Your mindset shifts, your stress decreases, your performance becomes more consistent. But let's be real, this doesn't happen overnight. That's where most people quit. They try something for a few days, don't see instant results, and assume it's not working. That mindset is exactly what keeps them stuck. Control is built through repetition. Every single day you train, you're reinforcing a signal between your brain and your body. You're telling your body, this is how I want you to respond. And over time, it listens. Another important truth, if you don't control your body will control you. Stress, anxiety, distraction, these things take over when there's no training in place. But when you've built control, you stay steady even when things aren't perfect. You don't panic, you don't lose focus, you stay in command. So instead of chasing quick solutions, ask yourself a better question. Am I actually in control of my body, or am I just hopping for the best? Because the moment you shift from hopping to training, everything starts to change. What if I told you that the difference between average results and life-changing improvement isn't talent, it's consistency? That sounds simple, almost too simple, but that's exactly why most people ignore it. They chase intensity. They chase quick wins. They look for something dramatic that feels like progress. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Asterisk small actions done every single day will always outperform big efforts done occasionally. Think about it. How many times have you started something with motivation, went all in for a few days, and then stopped completely? That cycle is the real problem. It's not that you can't improve, it's that you're not giving your body enough consistent input to actually change. Your body adapts based on repetition, not bursts of effort. One strong session won't transform you, but repeated daily practice will rewire how your body performs. Here, where it gets interesting. Consistency doesn't just train your body, it trains your identity. Every time you show up, even for just 3 minutes, you're proving something to yourself. I follow through. That builds discipline at a deeper level. It's no longer about whether you feel motivated or not. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth. And once something becomes automatic, that's when real progress starts to compound. Now ask yourself this. Are you relying on motivation, or are you building a system? Because motivation is unreliable. Some days you'll feel driven, other days you won't. If your progress depends on how you feel, you'll never stay consistent. But when you commit to a simple, non-negotiable routine, even something as small as a 3-minute daily exercise, you remove that uncertainty. You don't think about it, you just do it. Another powerful shift happens when you stop underestimating small efforts. People often think, what difference can 3 minutes really make? But that thinking is exactly what keeps them stuck. 3 minutes a day is over 1,000 minutes a year. That's hours of focused training directed at improving control, strength, and performance. And unlike random effort, this is targeted, intentional practice. That's what creates results. There's also a psychological edge to consistency. When you know you've been putting in the work every day, you carry yourself differently. There's a quiet confidence that builds, not because of what you hope will happen, but because of what you've been doing consistently behind the scenes. You're no longer guessing if things will improve. You expect improvement because you've earned it through repetition. But here's the part most people struggle with. Consistency is boring. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't give you instant rewards. And that's exactly why it works, because most people won't stick with it long enough to see the results. If you can do what others won't, even in small ways, you separate yourself over time. So instead of asking, is this enough? Start asking, can I do this every single day? Because that's the real game, not intensity, not perfection. Just showing up again and again until your effort turns into results. What if confidence wasn't something you had to fake, but something you could actually build, physically, through training? Most people think confidence is purely mental, like it comes from positive thinking or external validation. But here's the truth that changes everything. Asterisk confidence is deeply connected to how your body performs under pressure asterisk. And if your body feels unpredictable, your confidence will always feel fragile. Think about those moments where things don't go as expected. The hesitation, the doubt, the overthinking, it all comes from uncertainty. When you're not sure how your body will respond, your mind starts to spiral. But when you've trained your body, when you've built strength and control, you remove that uncertainty. You replace it with something far more powerful: trust. Now ask yourself this: do you trust your body, or do you hope it works the way you want? Because there's a huge difference. Hope creates anxiety. Trust creates confidence. And trust isn't built overnight. It's built through repetition, through showing your body exactly what to do again and again until it becomes reliable. Here, where strength comes in. Strength isn't just about force. It's about control, stability, and consistency. When you train specific muscles with intention, you're not just making them stronger, you're making them more responsive. That responsiveness is what gives you control, and control is what eliminates panic and hesitation. There's also a neurological component most people overlook. Every time you train a movement or muscle, you're strengthening the connection between your brain and your body. You're essentially upgrading your internal communication system. Over time, signals become faster, clearer, and more precise. That's why trained responses feel smooth and natural, while untrained ones feel awkward and uncertain. And here's the shift that most people never experience. When your body becomes reliable, your mind becomes calmer. You stop overanalyzing every situation. You stop worrying about what if. Instead, you stay present because you know your body can handle it. That's real confidence, not loud, not forced, but steady and grounded. Another important layer is how confidence carries over into other areas of life. When you start seeing improvement from something as small as a daily exercise, it reinforces a powerful belief. I can change and improve with effort. That belief doesn't stay limited to one area, it expands. You start approaching challenges differently. You become more proactive, more certain, more in control. But let's be honest, this kind of confidence isn't built by thinking about it. It's built by doing the work. You can't trick your mind into feeling confident if your body isn't prepared. That's why shortcuts fail. That's why temporary fixes don't last. Because deep confidence comes from evidence, real, repeated proof that your body can perform the way you want it to. So instead of chasing confidence as a feeling, start building it as a skill. Train your body, strengthen your control, and watch how your mindset shifts when your performance becomes something you can rely on. What if the results you're looking for aren't hiding in something big, but in something so small you've been ignoring it this whole time? It sounds almost unbelievable, but this is where most people go wrong. They underestimate the power of small, daily actions because they don't feel impressive in the moment. There's no instant transformation, no dramatic shift, no immediate reward. So they dismiss it. But here's the truth. The smallest consistent efforts are often the ones that create the biggest long-term change asterisk. Think about how habits work. No single day defines your progress, but repeated days do. One day of effort won't change anything. But stack that same effort over weeks, over months, and suddenly you're looking at a completely different level of performance. The problem is, most people quit before that stacking effect even begins. They don't stay in the game long enough to see how powerful small actions can become. Here's a simple way to understand it. Your body is always adapting. Every action you repeat sends a signal. When that signal is consistent, your body responds by strengthening that pattern. But when your effort is random, your body has nothing clear to adapt to. That's why small, repeated actions are so effective. They give your body a clear, consistent message. This is what I want to improve. Now ask yourself this. Are you overlooking small habits because they don't feel significant? Because that mindset is exactly what keeps progress out of reach. Big results don't come from big actions. They come from accumulated small ones. It's like building a foundation. Each brick seems insignificant on its own, but over time, those bricks create something solid and unshakable. There's also a psychological trap here. People often wait for the perfect moment to start something bigger. They think they need more time, more energy, or the right conditions. But small actions remove that barrier completely. You don't need perfect conditions for a 3-minute habit. You don't need motivation. You just need a decision. And once you start, momentum begins to build. Another powerful effect of small efforts is that they reduce resistance. When something feels easy and manageable, you're far more likely to stick with it. That consistency is what creates progress, not the difficulty of the task. In fact, the easier it is to repeat, the more likely it is to become part of your routine. And once it becomes part of your routine, it stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. But here's the part most people miss. Small efforts don't stay small. They compound. What feels like a tiny improvement today becomes a noticeable change in a few weeks and a significant transformation over time. The key is patience. If you expect immediate results, you'll always be disappointed. But if you trust the process, those small actions will quietly build into something powerful. So instead of asking, "Is this enough to make a difference?" start asking, "Can I repeat this every day without fail?" Because that's where the real power lies, not in doing something once, but in doing something consistently until the results become impossible to ignore. What if the real reason you haven't seen lasting results yet has nothing to do with lack of knowledge, but everything to do with lack of discipline? That's a hard truth, but it's also an empowering one. Because it means the solution isn't out of your reach. It's already within your control. Most people wait to feel ready before they take action. They rely on motivation to get started. But here's the reality. Motivation is temporary, unpredictable, and unreliable. Discipline is what actually creates transformation asterisk. Think about how often motivation comes and goes. One day you feel driven, focused, ready to change everything. The next day, that feeling disappears. Life gets busy, distractions take over, and suddenly the plan is forgotten. If your progress depends on that emotional state, then your results will always be inconsistent. That's why so many people stay stuck, not because they don't want to improve, but because they're relying on something that was never designed to last. Now imagine a different approach. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" you ask, "Is this something I've committed to doing no matter what?" That shift is where discipline begins. It removes the emotional negotiation. It turns action into a standard rather than a choice. And once something becomes a standard, it becomes much harder to skip. Here's something most people don't realize. Discipline isn't about being extreme or pushing yourself to the limit. It's about being consistent, even when it's easy to make excuses. Especially when it's easy to make excuses. Anyone can take action when they feel motivated. That's not impressive. What actually creates change is taking action when you don't feel like it, when you're tired, distracted, or busy, and doing it anyway. There's also a deeper psychological shift that happens when you build discipline. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen your self-trust. You prove to yourself that your words matter, that your decisions mean something. And that builds a powerful internal identity. I do what I say I'm going to do. That identity changes how you approach everything, not just one habit. But let's be honest, discipline can feel uncomfortable at first. It requires you to act without relying on emotion. It asks you to prioritize long-term results over short-term comfort. And that's exactly why it's so effective, because most people avoid discomfort. If you can learn to move through it instead of avoiding it, you instantly separate yourself from the majority. Another important truth is that discipline simplifies everything. When you remove the daily decision-making process, you reduce mental fatigue. You don't waste time debating whether or not to take action. You've already decided. That clarity makes it easier to stay consistent, and consistency is what drives results. And here, where transformation really happens, when discipline becomes automatic, when you no longer need to push yourself, remind yourself, or convince yourself, you just act. At that point, progress becomes inevitable because you've removed the biggest obstacle, your own inconsistency. So instead of chasing motivation, start building discipline. Focus on showing up, even in small ways, every single day. Because in the end, it's not what you do occasionally that shapes your results. It's what you do consistently, regardless of how you feel. What if the only thing standing between you and real improvement is a decision you keep postponing? Not a lack of knowledge, not a lack of ability, just a simple choice you keep pushing to later. It sounds harmless, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow, next week, or when things feel more convenient. But here's the reality. Every time you delay, you reinforce a habit of inaction asterisk. Think about how many times you've said, "I'll start soon." It feels productive in the moment, like you've made a plan, but nothing actually changes. Days pass, then weeks, and you're still in the same place. That's the danger of someday. It creates the illusion of progress without requiring any real action. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it becomes to break out of it. Now consider this. What makes today different from tomorrow? If you're waiting for the perfect moment, you'll be waiting forever. There will always be something: busy schedules, low energy, distractions, stress. Life doesn't suddenly clear space for you to improve. You have to create that space by deciding that starting now matters more than waiting for ideal conditions. Here's a powerful shift. Stop thinking of starting as a big, overwhelming step. It's not. Starting can be as simple as committing to just a few minutes. The barrier isn't the effort required, it's the hesitation before you begin. Once you take that first step, even a small one, resistance drops, momentum begins, and that momentum is what carries you forward. Ask yourself this: how would your results look if you had started 30 days ago, 60 days ago? The difference wouldn't come from doing something extreme, it would come from doing something consistently over time. And that's exactly what you gain when you start today instead of delaying. You give yourself a head start. You give your future self an advantage. There's also a mental shift that happens the moment you take action. You move from thinking to doing, from planning to executing. That shift builds confidence because you're no longer just someone who wants to improve. You're someone who is actively improving. That identity change is powerful. It reinforces itself every time you follow through. But here's the part most people don't realize. Starting doesn't have to feel perfect. In fact, it won't. You might feel unsure, unprepared, or even a little uncomfortable. That's normal. Waiting until you feel completely ready is just another form of delay. Progress doesn't require perfection, it requires action. Another key point is that starting early gives you time to learn and adjust. When you delay, you also delay your ability to improve. Mistakes, feedback, progress, all of that comes after you begin. So the sooner you start, the sooner you refine, and the sooner you see results. And let's be honest, no one is coming to push you. No perfect moment is arriving. The decision is yours. Every day you either move forward or stay exactly where you are. There's no neutral position. Even doing nothing is a choice, and it leads to the same outcome: no change. So instead of waiting for motivation, clarity, or the right time, shift your focus to one simple action you can take right now. Because the difference between staying stuck and making progress isn't time, it's the moment you decide to begin.